Hi. So we are now coming to the last part of this investment subject that we have this semester. In the previous videos that you have seen and watched so far, we have looked at the different characteristics of investment. We have looked at why companies need to invest. We have learned about 4 different methods to calculate whether or not an investment on some given assumptions proves to be profitable. Now, in the next steps in this subject, we want to test the sensibility of these assumptions that we have set up for the calculation of the profitability in this investment profile that we have made. Now, what we're doing now is what we call a ceteris paribus test, meaning we only change one assumption at a time, but I will explain you what that means when we go a little further in the video. Now, in this next slide, now the question is, why am I not able to? There you are. So this is why I'm going to explain to you what is the sensitivity analysis of an investment, what is the critical value analysis of an investment, and then the small example in Excel like you're used to. So there's a lot of text in this slide, so you might want to press pause and then read the text and then come back to me and I'll explain to you what this is. When we set up these assumptions to the profile, the investment profile, it's kind of like setting a budget, like when we do set a budget for the coming period or for different kinds of projects, etc. And if you recall that from last semester, we actually talked about budget simulations, so different budget scenarios where we test what will happen to the profit of the company when we change some of these assumptions. This is what we do when we talk about sensitivity analysis or critical value analysis in an investment profile. Now, the sensitivity analysis, it shows, and what we do is we test these assumptions one at a time and look at how sensitive is the capital value if we change the profile's assumptions, meaning what will happen to the capital value, what will change, or how much will it change if we change the assumptions of the investment profile. Critical value, here we want to take a, if you remember or recall, we talked about that the critical value of any investment is where capital value is equal to 0. So what we do with the critical value analysis is we look at how much can these assumptions change, only one at a time, if we look at where is the capital value equal to 0. Now, and the different assumptions that I'm talking about is, of course, the investment sum, the payments or the change in income, scrap values, interests or the capital calculation rate, etc. So this is what we're going to do. Now I have prepared a little example for you in Excel. So please open Excel and now let me see where did I put it? Here. And recreate this scenario, this case that you see here. Now, in this case, this could be any kind of company where you see company renting out something for other companies. Could be machinery that they rent out, etc. And I have set up these assumptions for the different things in the investment profile. Now, they are thinking of investing in a new machine worth 3 million. They want to test the profitability within a financial lifetime of 4 years. Scrap value expected to be 500,000. The calculation rate is 15%. The annual number of hours that they expect to be able to rent this machine is 5,000 hours. Now, the renting price that they take for renting out the machine would be 300 per hour. Every time they rent out and you use the machine, there are some service, some gasoline, something that needs to be taken care of. And they have calculated that the variable unit cost per hour would be 50. Now the maintenance cost per year, per annum, would be 150 for service and stuff like that on the machine. So what we do and what we miss here in our calculation is, of course, the change in income. So the first thing we do is to calculate the revenue. Now, the revenue would be calculated by taking the 5,000 hours that they expect to be able to actually rent this, and they are taking a renting price of 300, 1.5 million. We do the same thing with the variable cost. We have the variable unit cost, which should be 50, and we multiply that with number of renting hours. Subtract these two numbers and you get the contribution. Maintenance is the 150, a fixed amount every year, so you just pull it over. Remember to calculate these numbers. Don't write them. Otherwise, you will not have an Excel file that would work for you with what we do next. So we set up, like you're used to and have done many times now, we set up our investment profile here in this table. Start by picking up the investment sum in year 0. And in year 4, the scrap value. Remember, go get the numbers from your data area over here and not write the numbers. And here you will get the numbers from the total change in income over here. Now I already set this up, therefore it is already fixed in here. And fix the cell, press F4, or if you have a Macintosh, it's Command T to fix the cell so you can copy the cell down forward. Now net payments, like you know, the first column here added the change in income, looking like this. Go ahead, calculate the capital value, take the initial investment and add and find the NPV function and add here the information that Excel needs. The values that you need to put in is, like you always do, the net payments with not including the initial investment. So here you can see this is a profitable investment. We have a positive capital value of 426,353. I have set up some scenarios here that we want to test now. We want to test how sensible is this capital value if we change some of these assumptions. Now we can only change one at a time because we want to measure the effect that it has on this specific assumption. It's like testing if you are allergic to something. You don't want to test a whole lot of things at once, because if you respond to something, you wouldn't know what you responded to. So you only test yourself for one thing at a time, right? So here, what will happen to the capital value if I change my scrap value to, let's say, 0, like I've set them down here? So what I do here, because I've made this perfect Excel sheet, is I go up here in my data area and I simply change that to 0 and see what happens to capital value. See, capital value is still positive, but you can see it dropped a lot. So now it's 140,476. So what you want to do now is, what you can conclude now is that if scrap value would change to 0, you would still have a profitable investment and the capital value would be 140,000. So I want to copy this, Control C, this number. And then I want to set it in as a number, as a proof down here. Set it in as a number, not a function. You just want to, here you might want to type in the number if you don't know how to do this. Now I know what will happen. Okay, so I go back and now I change it back to the initial 500,000 here. Remember, always change the assumption back to the starting point. We're only testing one assumption at a time. So that would be, how sensible would the scrap value be if we changed it to 0? How sensible would capital value be to a scrap value that would change to 0? Still have a profitable investment. Now, it would be funny to look at what are we looking at if we reach the critical value of the scrap value. So here we have in Excel a very interesting a tool that is called the what if analysis. So what you do is you go to this up here, data, go into the what if analysis and press that button. Here you want to go for the middle one called goal seek, and you should get this picture, right? So remember, the critical value for all investments is where the capital value is equal to 0. So go up here, set in here in this cell in the first part, you want capital value up here at a value of 0. This is where we have the critical value, remember that. By changing, and now we're looking at the scrap value, remember? So by changing this scrap value information here. So here we have the capital value cell. Here we have it, we want it to be a big round 0 because this is the critical value for all investment profitability. By changing the scrap value and press enter, and then watch what happens to the scrap value number over here, okay? All right, so what happened here? Capital value is now 0. That's what we wanted it to be because that's the critical value of the investment. And we can actually afford the scrap value to become negative minus 245,694. That would be, of course you have to press enter here. That would be as low as the scrap value could actually drop, and you would still have a profitable investment. So let's write that, 245,694. So that's the critical value of the scrap value. Go ahead, change it back. And you can see this is where we started. So let's take a look at what happened if the renting hours is not 5,000, but actually the renting hours throughout the year would drop 20%. Now that could be throughout experience that the company has experienced that they actually have this insecurity of 20%. They don't know exactly how many hours they can actually rent out the machine. So go up into the data area and write equal sign and let number of renting hours drop 20%. Now you do that by multiplying with 0.8. If the renting hours would drop 20%, the investment would no longer be profitable. So set this number in as a number. So the renting price, if the renting hours would drop 20%, we would no longer have a profitable investment. But let's take a look at what is the critical point of this. So it again, back to the initial, erase the equal sign, erase this, the multiplied with 0.8. Now what would be the critical point for number of renting hours? Let's take a look at that. How much can we afford it to drop and we will still have a profitable investment? Go into data over here, the what if analysis here, goal seek here, and we want the capital value cell to reach the zero value, the value of 0 by changing number of renting hours. Press enter, see what happens. So number of renting hours can actually drop to 4,403 and we would still have a profitable investment. So the critical value for the number of renting hours per year would be 4,403. Hopefully you kind of starting to get the picture right now. I have set up some more assumptions here. Now let me just check how much room I still have with the video. Well, hopefully I'm still recording. Yeah, so let's try and see the next one, and you can just continuously try and test all of the different assumptions that you have made for both how sensible it is to watch changes and what's the critical value. Let's try and decrease the price of renting hours with 5%. We could do that up here. Remember always to change back the initial assumption. If you drop by 5%, you multiply by 0.95. Enter. So what would happen to capital value if it would drop 5%? We would still have a profitable investment. The capital value would be 212,229.